Well, I mean, it has some impact. Of course, the U.S. didn't go as far as to not allow the athletes to compete. That would have been very, very unpopular and really only punishes the athletes. But I think what Biden is trying to do is say that they're not going to be part of the fanfare, and they want to put the focus on human rights. Now, this is really a stain for China because they want to have the Olympics showcase China as a great power that is peaceful. They don't want any kind of negative news. They put great effort into selling counter narratives about what China's objectives are. And this doesn't make them look particularly good. And it shifts the focus away from how wonderful things are in China and what a modern country it is to this quote unquote, from the U.S.'s perspective, genocide. And so this is something that China would not be very happy with, even though they've dismissed it as negligible.
Yeah, they've sort of on one hand said it doesn't matter, they don't care if they don't come, then saying it's manipulative, then suggesting that the US will pay the price. It does suggest overall that they're not happy. What sort of countermeasures can they realistically take, though, China?
I mean, I think realistically, it would be that if there were any kind of sporting event, that they wouldn't send diplomatic representation. That's typically what happened with these boycotts, as we've seen in the past in 1980 and 1984, because it's just a diplomatic boycott. It doesn't have necessarily any kind of economic impact. But I mean, China takes these things very seriously. They look at it as an affront to them. And this is coming at a time when the relationship between the U.S. and China is deteriorating. So it's not really a step in the right direction for healing these tensions.
Natasha, a little later today, Joe Biden will be holding a fairly high-stakes phone call with Vladimir Putin over what is considered to be a very concerning build-up around the Ukraine border. Jen Psaki, we heard, says that they will try diplomacy first. But how assertive is he going to be with Putin, do you think?
Well, he is trying to make it clear to Putin that a Western-oriented Ukraine poses no direct threat to Russia, but they can't make any promises that Putin wants, that Ukraine will never be a member of NATO, or that there'll never be support or or some sort of defense missiles inside of Ukraine. They can't make these types of clear promises. And that's not going to be great from Putin's perspective, because Putin has said that, within 7 minutes, NATO can be inside Ukraine and attack Russia, and that poses a threat to us. So I think that Biden is trying to de-escalate the situation at the moment. He's also going to make clear that if Russia were to invade, that the support for Ukraine will be unshakable, and that there will be a whole host of economic sanctions that will go much further than the sanctions that are in place already, and that there will be banking restrictions, similar to the type of banking restrictions that Iran faces. And what we do know about the sanctions that are already in place, though they have not crippled Russia's economy, they've made it nearly impossible for Russia to grow. So if there's any kind of concerted force among Western powers to enforce these types of sanctions, this would have serious economic consequences on Russia.
How do you think Putin's going to be persuaded by the threat of further sanctions?
It's possible. I mean, I think what is part of the calculation is that though amassing troops on the border is probably popular domestically within Russia, it would be unpopular to get stuck in some sort of war with Ukraine that could be really costly economically, where a lot of people could lose their lives. I don't think that would be very popular. And I think what Putin is trying to do at the moment is to deter the Ukrainian government from leaning more towards the West, and to deter Western countries from offering more support of Ukraine. I think this is a little bit more of brinkmanship than Russia really thinking, okay, we're going to actually go in there. Now, on the other hand, Russia has already invaded Crimea, annexed it. It's invaded Georgia in the past. So it's hard to predict what Putin is going to do. But I think this would be one step too far.
It is interesting that Joe Biden last night spoke to his EU counterparts. He seems to have them on board for any further sanctions. How critical is that?
Well, it is critical, because I think that was something that Putin was banking on, with that there would be a lot of focus on COVID at the moment, and that individual European countries might not want to be united in going after Russia in this particular way because they're dependent on Russian gas and we have a cold winter coming up. So it's very critical anytime you're trying to employ any kind of sanctions that they're not loopholes and other countries not following suit, because that's the only way for these sanctions to have any kind of impact.
Natasha, as always, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.